Your ex is not thinking about you the way you think they are, and you're probably making it worse. Something nobody told me about breakups that actually changed everything for me. So I went through a breakup about 8 months ago, and I spent the first few weeks doing everything wrong. I mean everything. Texting at 2 a.m., showing up in their Instagram likes, replying to their stories, keeping myself in the friend group just so I had a reason to hear about them. I thought staying present meant staying relevant. It doesn't. It means staying pathetic. I say that with love because I was deep in it at the time. Here's what I eventually worked out. And I wish someone had just told me this straight from day one. Your ex's feelings about you after a breakup are almost entirely shaped by how you behave in those first few weeks. Not by what the relationship was like. Not by how good things were between you. By what you do right now, in this window, while it's all still fresh. If you are begging, pleading, blowing up their phone, keeping yourself planted in their social circle so you can quietly monitor everything, they are not sitting there thinking about you romantically. They are feeling relieved. Breaking up with someone is genuinely hard. Most people agonize over it for weeks before they actually do it. And when you react with desperation, it just confirms to them that they made the right call. You become easy to dismiss. You become the person who couldn't handle it. But when you go quiet, like actually quiet, not the kind where you're secretly checking their profile at midnight, genuine quiet, that is when something changes. They start wondering, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? Why haven't you reached out? Are you actually okay? The brain doesn't like unanswered questions, and your silence becomes one they can't switch off. You go from being the person they left to being someone they're genuinely curious about, and that's a completely different thing. There's also this thing that happens where no contact just reads as self-esteem, even if you're an absolute mess behind closed doors, which honestly, same. The silence communicates that your life is continuing, that you're not falling apart waiting for them. Suddenly, the version of you they broke up with starts getting quietly revised in their head. The thing that really shifted things for me was a book I found called Silence is Your Superpower. I wasn't expecting much, if I'm honest. I just needed something to read that wasn't my own thoughts going in circles. It reframed the whole thing for me. Not in a manipulative way or a get-them-back way, more like it helped me understand that the silence is actually for you first. The fact that it makes your ex wonder about you is almost a side effect. What it really does is stop you reacting, stops you waiting, gives your brain something else to do. Anyway, this is just my experience. If you're freshly out of something and you're sitting there wanting to send that message or show up somewhere you know they'll be, just don't. The silence is working even when it doesn't feel like it. And I want to expand on that, because the part people usually miss is what happens after the initial chaos. The first few days of a breakup feel like withdrawal, not in a poetic way, but in a literal nervous system way. You're checking your phone like it's going to change reality. You reread old messages like there's a hidden clue in them. You start constructing entire narratives based on last seen, times and whether they viewed your story. It's honestly kind of wild what the brain does when it doesn't want to accept something is over. And in that state, every impulse feels like truth. You feel like texting them means you're being honest. You feel like showing up in their notifications means you still matter. You feel like explaining yourself will somehow reset everything back to how it was. But it doesn't reset anything. It just creates noise. What I didn't understand back then is that communication after a breakup isn't neutral. It has weight. Every message carries emotional pressure, even if you try to make it sound casual. And the other person feels that pressure instantly, even if they don't consciously admit it. So when you're sending long paragraphs trying to explain or fix, or clear things up, what they're actually receiving is intensity. And intensity after a breakup rarely reads as love. It reads as overwhelm, and overwhelm makes people back up. There was a point for me where I genuinely thought, if I just find the right words, they'll understand me again. Like the breakup was just a misunderstanding waiting to be translated correctly. But most of the time, they already understood you. They just arrived at a different conclusion. That's the part nobody wants to accept. So when I finally stopped reaching out, it wasn't because I suddenly became strong or enlightened. It was because I ran out of ways to make myself feel better in the moment. And that's usually what contact is. A short-term emotional painkiller that makes the long-term situation worse. The weird thing is, the silence starts doing something to you before it does anything to them. At first, it feels like loss of control, like you're doing nothing, which feels unnatural when your brain is screaming, "Do something." But after a while, something shifts. You start noticing gaps in your day where they used to live. You start remembering who you were before you were constantly interpreting their behavior. You start getting moments where you're not thinking about them at all. And those moments slowly get longer. That's where your nervous system starts unclenching. And yeah, they might still cross your mind, but it stops feeling like urgency and starts feeling like memory. Only after that stage do you realize something uncomfortable but important. If someone is meant to come back into your life in a healthy way, it won't be because you convinced them in a moment of panic. It'll be because time gave both of you clarity. And clarity never shows up in chaos. One thing I didn't expect was how silence changes your perception of them too. When you're constantly exposed to someone's digital presence, you don't actually process the breakup. You just stay emotionally entangled. But when you step back, your brain starts doing something interesting. It stops idealizing them automatically. You remember the full picture again, not just the highlight reel your mind kept replaying at 2 a.m. You start seeing patterns you ignored. You start remembering conversations that didn't sit right. You start realizing where you were overextending yourself. Not in a bitter way, more like clarity without the emotional filter. And that's the real reason silence is powerful. Not because it makes them miss you, but because it stops you from abandoning yourself just to stay emotionally connected to someone who has already left the relationship. Eventually, I realized something kind of simple but brutal. If someone only values you when you're available, reachable, and emotionally on call, that isn't love. That's access. And silence removes access. So if you're in that phase right now where everything in you wants to reach out, fix it, explain it, or reopen the door just a little bit, you're not alone in that feeling. But that feeling isn't a signal to act. It's just withdrawal talking. And it does pass. Not quickly, not cleanly, but it passes.